Okay, drawing and painting 3. What I would like you guys to do for your first media exploration is to really figure out how we can move past just representation and create meaning. So we're going to create a dynamic and balanced composition using the rope that was given to you. And we want that rope to help communicate a story. So as you are experimenting with the rope and thinking through what it could mean, you want to think about how and what story is going to be told, how you will pose the object, how you will pose the rope to convey that story, what angle is going to work best, and thinking about what it can do. So things that you could do is you could just do some brainstorms. So some very simple brainstorming would be a list, right? Listing out things that ropes are used for, right? And what ropes can do. You could also do like a mind map and think about not only the function of rope, but meaning that could come from the rope. And so when you think about that, keep it in mind, you're thinking of like branches. So if you thought about rope being used to tie something, you could then branch it out from like how you could do that in those other ovals. So one of the suggestions I would do for this is to research the different purposes and the different uses of rope. Thinking about like what kind of knots could be made. A lot of students often will do research, either like sailor's knot or like Boy Scout knots, to figure out different styles of knots that they can use the rope for. You're able to use the rope provided, but if you have an interesting rope at home that you could use as well, feel free to use it. I would prefer you not just use like shoelaces or something simple like that to draw. I would prefer that you communicate with me what you're going to use instead and show it to me before you begin. So think about what you can use this rope for. Okay, so when you are looking at some of these samples, I want you to think about what could be the story, right? When I see this knot, right, and it's centered, it makes me think, why did they put the knot exactly in the center? And is this a tight knot? There's not a lot of gappage there. And so maybe someone is feeling kind of all either like physically bound up or physically tense, because it really looks like it's being pulled because these pieces of the rope are horizontal. So they're coming out from the edges, right? This one is more a looser knot and the edges are frayed. So what could that convey to the viewer, right? Coming, like the feeling of maybe coming undone, right? Here, the student burned the rope. So if you wanted to do something like that, please make sure that you do it in an environment where you can burn it. Maybe going outside would be a better use of, or a better use of space, going by like a fireplace. But you can alter and change that rope. I don't want you to feel like you can't fray it on the ends or burn it. Just make sure you do it in a good way. But notice here, there's one strand that's still left. Maybe the essence of like holding on. Here you can see some of these knots get much more complicated. I think this is like a sailor knot, right? And then you want to think about your composition. So thinking about developing a focal point, more than likely moving it out of the direct center. A lot of the times when it comes to the compositions of this work, what is probably the thing that is the least successful for most students is making the rope too small and having too much background. So make sure that you have a balance of your positive and negative space. The positive being the rope and the negative space being the white or maybe a selected background. A lot of times people want to incorporate maybe cast shadows so it doesn't feel like it's floating. So what kind of balance is this? Is it symmetrical or asymmetrical? Asymmetrical, symmetrical. This one is symmetrical, even though it's not exact. It has the same amount of physical weight on both sides, whereas this one is asymmetrical. right? There's more going on the left than there is on the right. I also like that one is horizontal, one is vertical, right? What could be better about this composition? It's too small, it's too centered, it has no background, right? Remember that you don't have to get super complex with the knots. You could even do extreme close-up. This is the piece. The larger one is exactly how this student drew it. Notice the great texture and the great shading that she did. But also this one I just cropped to show that you could really do a very small section of this. You just have to keep in mind you want to convey meaning. You need to have it beyond just technical and compositional skills. We want to tell a story, right? So what I would like you guys to do today is to really just experiment. This work is going to be only 4 by 5, so it's going to be very, very small. So even though it's small, what will that story be? Think about maybe how lighting could affect that meaning. Is there a place you can go where you can put a spotlight, or you can put side lighting to create dramatic shadows? How can the placement of the rope create meaning? What's going to be the focal point? How much of the space are you going to use? So thinking about that balance of positive and negative space. Do you want to incorporate a cast shadow so it's not floating? Thinking about methods of composition. So how are you going to compose? I would say a majority of students take 10 to 20 photos, right? Really play, really experiment taking photos. If I were taking photos, I would try to take them in the shape of the final artwork, which is 5 by 4. So don't do panoramics, don't do squares. Make sure that you're using rectangles for this. Also, sometimes students want to practice with some sketching. That could work too, but just because sketching takes longer, I don't want you to think, oh, I'll try one thing and be done. I really want you to do more than one idea so that you can pick the best one. So that is the task that you have first.